Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Those who've been watching us quite a bit, I appreciate that. The views and the likes, that's and the comments. Actually, I get into those too. I appreciate everybody who does that. This is Dave Emmons with a strange reality, and not all topics do I cover are strange. I know the world is strange right now, and I usually have an open dialogue, and I talk about how bad things are, chaotic things that are going on. Maybe this lady that I have on, and I've had her on before. She's done a great job. Everybody likes her, and she will probably help calm our nerves a little bit as she talks about things. And her name is Eesha Patel. She's from down under, from Australia, and we're in the middle, I guess, and then Europe is in the four or east or whatever, not four east, but east of us. But the U.S. is stuck in the middle of all these great countries. I guess they're having little problems themselves too. But Isha Patel, she says, why a spiritual mentor? I know why I need one, because I'm such a heathen, So that's my excuse. She said she's always known that her purpose in life is to serve others, and she's been pulled towards the spiritual world since she was a child after exploring different modalities. She said she found Merkaba meditation and experienced her first moment in true transcendence. After this moment of bliss and clarity, I knew that I was in the right path and had to share this with others. Since then, she said she's become a master level energy healer, challenger, and spiritual coach. I was called to create the origin activation modality. For more than 20 years, I've practiced meditation while helping world class business leaders access the 13 dimensions, working to raise this planet's vibrations. 13 dimensions. Well, and I guess we're at the third, and we're looking at the fourth and maybe the fifth. Hopefully, some of us will travel higher, so maybe, and some of us may not. We'll ask Isha about that. And here's what she says. She says, here's a few highlights of what she does and what she does as a guide. She's a founder of the modality Origin Activation, more than 20 years of meditation practice, more than 6 years experience as a spiritual mentor, co-author of 3 books, Dear Entrepreneur, Life After Goals, and NIFNEX Business Tips. Is that NIFNEX? Yeah. Nilnex or Nifnex. I can't read a small print. Business tips. I always have problems with my glasses issue. But speaking appearances and national and international events, in which she just told me all ago, she's been traveling a lot and still has more trips coming up, including the Living Well Expo. More clients experience a total mindset shift after just one session. She's a creator of the podcast Success from the Soul, and everybody should tune into that and listen to it. And Isha Patel, welcome to the show. And what do you have to say for openings? And where have you been? And where are you going next?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the first thing I'll say is probably that that bio is a little bit on the older side. As you're reading some of that out, I thought, oh geez, I haven't done those things in a while. So I guess it's an opportunity to see how far I've come. I do have a podcast, Success from the Soul. We stopped running that a little while back. I now do First Contact, which is focused on the galactic side of things. So I've had a big shift into more of the galactic side of things in the last year or so.
Okay.
Probably since we last spoke.
And every time yeah, I got this. I tell you what, I had a packet of notes on you, and I
Yeah.
put them in a big pile. I looked for them. I looked for them. I couldn't find them, and that was the notes that I had on you about 4 or 5 months ago, and that was more probably up to date. But then I had to go on the internet to find out what was new, and what I found out what was new. You're telling me it was old. Okay, so
Oh.
that's me. That's I'm bad. Okay, but no, the galactic thing. Every time you mention the galactic, you know, studies that you're doing and this, I think of ETs right away. Of course, I'm ET oriented and UFO oriented. I cover a lot of different topics, but when you say galactic, right away comes ETs. So galactic team. The messages from the galactic team. We can start there, and maybe talk about that. And what do you mean by the Galactic Team, Eesha, and what's some of the messages?
Yeah, beautiful. So I work largely with the Galactic Federation. So I'll go through some of the shifts I've had since the last time I was on the show. Last time I was on the show, I was a little bit more geared towards the business coaching end of the spectrum. And since then have been guided to really move a lot more into the galactic side of things by just focusing more on helping people connect with the galactic beings.
Mm-hmm.
So, why this becomes really important to entrepreneurs and CEOs, coaches, leaders is because there is this imminent open contact happening. And actually, the beings have been telling me for at least 10 years now that around 2027, there's going to be a really pivotal moment where we come to a choice point, a choice point for humanity. And if we keep holding that vision towards that open contact, they keep reminding me that we are the ones that get to create that. A lot of people they're very focused right now on predictions, and they just want to sit there and go, oh, so and so was right or so and so was wrong, and they just want to have judgment. But people forget that, well, actually we get to be a part of that. The reason it'll be either right or wrong will come down to each individual's contribution to that vision. So it's putting the power back in the hands of the people and saying that, well, yes, there is a huge possibility for this open contact to happen by 2027. But if you're sitting around judging everyone else who's talking about it, then you're not really contributing to the process yourself. So we are invited to look at our own part that we play in that vision actually coming true in the peaceful way that we're all hoping that it happens.
Mm-hmm. And I guess for you to stay up and positive, you don't watch much news on TV or radio, I guess, because it's all misinformation, disinformation. History's not what it really like we've been taught. Uh, Also, I hear a lot of people, like you alluded to it, a lot of people are doomsday people. On the internet they talk about, oh, you better be ready, tomorrow is coming, doomsday. We're going to be in a third world war. Pack up your water and your food and your belongings and get ready for 3 or 4 days of blackouts, and nothing ever comes true. And these people, I talk about that. I've had a couple of, I guess, talks on the internet, on Instagram and also TikTok, that these people need to shut up. I mean, they just need, like you said, to follow along with your feelings and contribute to a positive end of things, and not contribute to a negative, scary thing. Is that right, Eesha? You've probably seen a lot of these people.
Yeah, I'm very wary when it comes to predictions, good or bad,
Yeah.
because when you make a prediction, it's like you're taking away the conscious creative power that we have. Now, I totally understand when it comes to timelines that there are optimal scenarios and there are possibilities for things to unfold in certain ways, but things can always change. Because what's ultimately creating our reality is our frequency. So if somebody says on the news, oh, there's going to be a big doom and gloom, it's not the prediction that creates it. It's the millions of people that watch it and decide to believe it and put energy into it that makes it come to fruition.
Yeah.
So that's the piece that I keep reminding people. It's what are you choosing to believe? What are you choosing to put your vision on? What are you choosing to put your energy into? Because no matter what somebody says, we always have co-creative power. And I'll tell you straight up, every single person has equal co-creative power as everyone else. And I want that to land for people.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person has equal co-creative power and ability as everyone else. What that means is that even just the two of us, me and you, Dave, my thoughts are equally creating and inputting into the reality as your thoughts are. But the question is, what is that we're putting into it? Now, some people have clearer channels than others, that their intentions are going to be more amplified because there's not as much, say, emotional baggage or trauma in the way of that. Because there are things that can impact your ability to create. If trauma is actually a really big one, if you have trauma sitting in your body at a cellular level, from it could be from anything, it could be from childhood, it could be from some experience that happened to you at any point in your life. If that is being held in your body, then no matter how many positive affirmations you do and positive thoughts you have, that vibration of that energy is still going out into the universe. And that's something to be mindful of, not to be scared of, because I'm sure people are listening to this and going, oh shit, I'm suddenly responsible for all the negative things. I don't want you to think that. This is a message of empowerment and hope to realize that the second you become aware of that, the second you become mindful of that, then that stuff is no longer in the shadows, right? And
Right.
when it's no longer in the shadows, now you suddenly come to a point of empowerment through choice. And that's the message, is that we always have a choice.
Now I know why my wife likes you so much, because she tells me, if I get a little upset, I say, oh my goodness, I think there's something wrong with the car. And she'll tell me, quit thinking it, or there will be something wrong with the car, or
Right.
don't think anything negative, just think everything positive. And I try to do that. But as a guy, as a combat veteran and everything, I have to look, I'm a realist in a way, but I'm also, I try to be kind and try to be open and enlightening to people, and that's why I do the shows and that's why I write the books. Uh, but yeah, in my fourth book, I just sent it to the publisher today. It's a sci-fi book, and it's a love relationship between an extraterrestrial lady, a Pleiadian, and an Earth guy, a man, and so that relationship forms up. So I did it, and I went through all my background, but I hear what you're saying about the negative and positive, and I have a lot of negative people around me. And how do you get around that issue? You have a lot of people that are, they're getting up in my age, and a lot of them have medical problems and things of that nature. So how do you get around all that issue? How do you stand positive with all that around you?
Well, I think something the masters would say, when I'm talking about the masters, I'm talking about, Buddha or even Eckhart Tolle, spiritual leaders and teachers of our time. Something I've learned from them is that it's not even so much about trying to stay positive all the time as it is about coming into acceptance of what is. One of my favorite things that I've done in my lifetime is I've attended a 10-day Vipassana retreat, which I loved. I think if anyone has the opportunity to go and do that and go spend 10 days by yourself in silence, it's one of the best things that you can do for your soul. And when I was sitting in my Vipassana retreat, they tell you to breathe. All you're doing is you're focusing on the breath and you're focusing on the body. And when you're in that moment of stillness, it is everything but stillness inside there. Every thought comes up, every emotion comes up, every little pain in the body gets amplified. I remember sitting there and my back was sore, and I thought, okay, well, I have nothing to do. I'm just sitting here. I should just be calm. And my back just got more and more and more and more sore, because the body decided that the moment that I'm still is the best time to bring up all the issues.
Mhm.
And we see this in reality. Who goes on holiday after a long time, then suddenly on the first day they get sick, because the body says, oh, this is the perfect time now to bring up all the stuff that I've been waiting to release.
Yes.
So what they teach in those practices is they teach that acceptance, because when you can sit in the what's arising, in what's coming up, then it comes up and it goes. It comes up and it gets released. And I tell you, there is a reprieve at the end of it all. You do eventually get to find a bliss and a peace, sitting in the stillness, but not until you've gone through all of the stuff first. So
Right.
I remember the first few days sitting in meditation and just stuff was coming up, stuff was coming up, stuff was coming up. It's endless. And then eventually, sometime around day 5, day 6, day 7, you go, oh, maybe there's not that much stuff left anymore. And you just find a few moments of peace in there. And then it comes up again. So to answer your question, it's listen to the negativity only to the extent that you're noticing it, but then don't get lost in it, because it's coming up from old programs. It's coming up from old stuff that's happened. Your background as a veteran or whatever people have experienced, it's sitting in your body. So the moment you sit down to meditate, the moment you sit down and be still, even if you're just watching TV, all your old stuff decides to come up. What do? Do you get lost in it? Do you suddenly get angry at the person who angered you 20 years ago? No, you sit there and you watch it, because it's your body bringing it up. It's your kundalini rising. It's clearing it for you. It's a very smart system. It's clearing it for you if you can sit still long enough to allow the negativity to get released.
Yeah.
Because then on the other end of that is just acceptance.
It doesn't matter where you're at when you do this, like your 10-day meditation, being alone. Doesn't matter where you're at in order to do this. You have to go somewhere like out in the desert or out in the forest or something? No, you can do it right where you are, Eesha?
I did it. I did it when I was road tripping across the US back in March, just a couple of months ago.
Oh,
Because I had long, long days, really long days by myself. I was traveling all the way across country, so I'd hired myself a car and I drove all the way from Sedona in Phoenix to, sorry, in Arizona to Miami.
oh,
So all the way from Arizona to Florida, I drove across country. So I was driving sometimes 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And as I'm sitting there, I'm sitting, I got my music on, or sometimes just in silence, and old thoughts start to come up. So I'm practicing this process just while I'm driving. It's just the awareness. Now don't go meditate while you're driving. Obviously, keep your eyes open and keep your eyes on the road.
mhm.
But I'm just noticing. So anytime we're in stillness, anytime when there isn't drama in our lives, our body uses that as an opportunity to bring up old stuff and get rid of it because it doesn't want to hold on to it. So
Yeah,
you just allow the process to
yeah.
happen.
You were in Sedona. I love Sedona. I've been there several times, and I
Mhm.
did what you were saying. I put on some mood music, some real, I guess, spacey kind of music, mellow stuff,
Mhm.
with all the synthesizers and everything going on. And I listen to that while I'm in the car. When I get to Sedona, I had a few things happen to me there. And I think the reason why is because I cleansed myself of a lot of the negativity, got out and saw the wide opens and started, and I went by myself. And so I had a lot of time by myself, and I can understand what you're saying. It worked for me just taking a solo trip, and I saw several things, even met an ET. So and it's in my book, in my first book. But yeah, it's what you're saying is true. I mean, you have to let to unload. Another thing I've been hearing, a lot of people say ground yourself, like put your bare feet on the ground, and your negative energy, your electrons you'll gather more electrons or lose more electrons. Isha, you know anything about grounding? Is that part
Oh,
of it?
absolutely. And I believe there's now quite a bit of science to it as well. I've got a grounding mat at home which I lay on, and it's amazing. I mean, I find it's very centering. I find it helps release all that discharge. And I noticed the difference as well because when I was traveling, I've been on the road for at least 3 months this year. And not having my grounding mat with me, sleeping in hotels and just being all over the place. And then coming back and suddenly going back into that grounded state, I was like, oh yes, this is it. Like I really feel that relaxation. And I think our bodies are designed to be connected to the earth. We're supposed to, walk around barefoot, get that exchange with the soil. I think there's a lot of connection there that we're missing nowadays, just with the lifestyles that we have. Everything is now pavements and bricks, cement. If we took all of that away and we just went back to the bare earth, I think we would naturally find a sense of peace and calm because that's what our body is made for, and I think that's what it's used to.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I ran around barefooted all the time. In on the dirt, the mud, the mud puddles, of jumping. I was a happy kid. I mean, I was happy. I didn't have any worries. Of course, most kids don't. You know, until you start taking on bills and things like that, and you're fighting, you're living.
It's actually it's a very different landscape these days, Dave, and it's quite sad. I'm sure there's a lot of contributing factors, but kids these days are very stressed out. Young children now, it's a quite a big issue actually, especially in the Western world, that children are being medicated for depression as young as 8, 10 years old. Like, teenage suicide is higher than ever before because kids don't have that. Instead of going and running around like we did, I ran around outside. I was not stuck to devices. I didn't have my first phone till I was 13 years old. And even then, I think that's now too young. Who needs a phone at 13? No one, So like I just think we've kind of yeah, we've put all these technologies into our lifestyles. And I see 3-year-olds now in the restaurant watching an iPad instead of having conversation with the adults because it's easier and quieter, and the parents just want to shut the kids up and they chuck their kids in front of an iPad every day while having their meal. And I think, what are these kids growing up with? 3-year-olds are being taught that every day you watch TV when you eat. What's going to happen when they're 30? What's going to happen when they're 50? That ingrains that lifestyle into them. And I just think, as a kid, you should be out there playing with nature. I was chasing ladybugs when I was a kid. I
Yeah.
was playing with caterpillars on my finger when I came home after school. I was riding around on my little tricycle and going down to the park at the end of the street by myself. Like that's what I did when I grew up. I was riding a bike all the way across the suburbs in Perth.
Mhm.
Whereas even just one generation below me, I don't see that anymore. I do not see kids playing outside in my street where I live right now. Everybody's indoors, everybody's on televisions, everybody's on devices, they're playing Minecraft, and I just think like the health of our body is so dependent on our connection with nature and going outside, having fresh air, getting sunshine. That's what we did all day, every day when we were kids. And I just don't see that anymore. And the result of that is kids are getting medicated. Kids are getting, they're going to doctors for stress and depression at such young ages that it's heartbreaking.
Right. And I know I've been through all that as a kid. I had a rough life, but you know what? I enjoyed it playing in cardboard boxes and everything. The only thing that's positive about the kids nowadays, I went to Spectrum to hook up my TV. The smart TV was smarter than me. It
Yeah.
had its own mind.
A
So
2-year-old can probably fix
and a
that.
lady at Spectrum told me, she looked at me, she said, "Do you have a 12-year-old at home?" I said, "No." She said, "You're going to have a hard time with this TV because it's really difficult. It keeps taking you to Google all the time, and I couldn't get out of that. I even called on a tech, at Spectrum and another location that had the TV, and they couldn't figure it out. I finally just stumbled across it and got around that block that they couldn't get around. So yeah, it's tough, but I see a lot of little kids that playing piano, they're masters at piano. Are these the indigo children, Isha, they talk about that are really smart and probably they're having they're I guess they're adopting another soul, an older soul when they're born.
We're a little bit past the indigos at the moment. So the indigos actually came through probably closer to just after Second World War. So the indigos are a bit older now. We've since then had the crystal children, the rainbow children. There's many generations of children coming through. And what you're specifically referring to there are starseed children. They're
Yeah.
coming in with very specific rays of frequency, and they're coming in with different levels of awakeness. So I'm not actually even an indigo myself. I'm probably more on the crystal rainbow end of the spectrum because I'm a little bit younger than some of the indigos.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's many different rays coming through. I've seen some children coming through now with a really beautiful sort of turquoise aqua ray now. Some of the very young ones coming in now. So yeah, I think there is a divine plan in all of this, and the star seeds play such a big role in that. I very much identify as a star seed. I when I learnt that term a few years ago, I thought, wow, yeah, I can really resonate with that, because when I went through my spiritual awakening in 2015 and I realized, that I have this galactic heritage and I can channel, with the Acturians and all of that, I thought, geez, why am I different to everyone else? And then I realized it's because I'm coming in as a star seed with the purpose of helping others awaken.
Yeah, I the star seed has been talked about a lot, and I had a couple of guests, the last couple of guests that uh Elsa, she's from Australia, had her on the show. Elsa is a Brannigan or something like that. I can't think of the last name, but she was also talking to her and her whole family. She's got 8 kids, and her whole family talked to ETs and I guess spiritual entities and things. What can we do with the kids, Aisha, as we're on this topic? What can we do to help these kids grow up properly, besides taking away their computers? And I don't know if we want to do that, Aisha, because we're a computer world. I mean, everything works by
I don't want to take them away. Now, I'm drawing upon, I do have a master's in early childhood, so I can
yeah,
speak with expertise on this. That was
good.
my previous life, so I've actually done that for quite a number of years. So when it comes to raising children, it's really important to understand the stages of development in a child and to change the education system in a way that's actually going to be beneficial to their stages of development. There are many alternative schooling systems out there that I find have many perks, many benefits. You've got the Steiner education system, which actually says not to give technology to children at a young age. They don't say never. I mean, by the time the kids get to high school, whatever, they can use everything, but it's just in the early years, because in the early years, different stages of development are occurring. So you've got children that are still learning their social skills, their emotional skills, they're learning how to regulate themselves, that's not the time to chuck an iPad in front of them. You know, that's the time where you sit them at the dinner table and you talk about the feelings and what you did today, and having those sorts of conversations, so that they can go out into the world as social beings, and they know how to make friends, and they know how to communicate with the world around them.
Mhm.
Later on down the track, when the mind is more in development, that's when you can bring in devices and technology, and you know, kids from all schooling systems, even Montessori or Reggio or Milo, there's so many different schooling systems out there. They can all go on to work in IT, they can all go on to work with AI. So like they're going to be stopped from doing that. But if you introduce certain things too young, then you're taking away from the development that needs to happen at that age. The early years is so important for social, emotional, and physical development. Kids need to be running around climbing monkey bars, not
Right,
watching iPads at
right.
3 years old.
Mhm. I had had to I had to bring in an element here that's, I guess, slightly negative, but everybody has to pay attention to it. It's like the other day at a theme park, 3 kids disappeared. Kids are being kidnapped and being taken and being harmed. Just the other day in New York, a 13-year-old was harmed and whatever. But this that goes on quite a bit, and the parents, I guess they need to stay close to these kids when they're out playing and have a guardian with them whenever they're out alone. I was able to walk the streets by myself. I mean,
Sorry,
so but
devastating
today,
that this is the
yeah,
case now.
yeah, you can't
Yeah.
now. It's just so that's another element to bring up. I'm always good at bringing up negatives. I'm sorry, but that's a part of the what parents have to look at, I guess.
Yeah, it's devastating. And you know, all of that just creates more fear. It just it highlights the imbalance in our society. You know, when people are traumatized, when people don't experience love as children, then they're more likely to go out into the world as adults and do those sorts of horrible things. So yes, on the one hand, it's up to parents to keep their children safe, but at a wider societal level, we need to look at, why is that even happening? What is causing this epidemic of crime to even happen? And what can we be doing about it as society? It's a big question. I don't have the answer to that. All I know is that there are more problems now in the world than when I was young, because I remember being so much more carefree. As a 10-year-old, I would ride my bike for like an hour by myself with no parent around, and I never felt unsafe whatsoever. I always felt like everyone in the world, every adult is going to look after me. You know, I always had this sense that you know, like it takes a community or a village to raise a child, that every adult is responsible for every child's needs to be met, for safety, for food, for water, for clothing.
Right.
And the fact that we're in a world now that that's not the case, that you can't trust other adults because some adults aren't to be trusted, it's devastating.
Mhm. I I think the children today are also afraid. They see their parents and then their uncles and aunts going out there and protesting and sometimes even getting involved in riots all over. We're talking about Europe, we're talking about Australia, we're talking about Canada, we're talking about the US. It's all over, and the kids must be seeing this, and it's part of the chaotic world we live in today, and the children must be really affected by that, and that makes them withdraw even more. Wouldn't you think, Aisha?
Yeah, well, when children are sensitive, which most kids are quite sensitive to energy, you know, as you're born, you're quite connected to the higher realms. You're generally children can see through the veil. Like when you see kids looking up and smiling at something that doesn't exist, they might be seeing their spirit guides, their angels. They might be looking into the spirit world a lot of the time. And then as they get older, their soul gets more embodied into their physical body. And so then what happens is they sometimes pick up the more of the fears and the anxieties of the world around them, because they think, well, this is the norm, this is what's going to keep me safe. It's not coming from a place of harm. It really is coming from the reptilian part of the brain that says, I need to keep myself safe. And so that's why kids these days suddenly have more anxiety, more stress, more depression. But they're picking up that energy from the adults around them, from the society around them, because there is so much fear, there is so much negativity. But at the same time, you know, the conversations like this can lead to a positive outcome, because then we can ask ourselves, well, what can we do about it? How can we protect our children and keep them in that higher state of vibration? And it begins with education. It begins with having spiritual conversations. it begins with instilling positive belief systems. Like if you grow up as a child thinking I'm always going to be looked after, I've always got my angels around me, my parents are always going to love me, that creates a very different internal world for a child versus someone who experiences maybe not being looked after, neglect, trauma, you know. So it's up to the adults to make sure that every child has their fundamental needs met.
Mhm. I don't have any children right now, so but I can see the kids that are coming up nowadays going to have a rough time. Let's get back to that galactic team. You say you talked to Octurians and other ETs. Could you tell us a little bit about that, Aisha?
Yeah, so back in 2015, I went through a really big spiritual awakening experience for myself. And one of the things that happened as a result of that was I started communicating with, they call themselves a Council of Light. And so the Council of Light, I later realized was an Arcturian council. And then I discovered that there are many, many different races out there. So to present day now, I connect with over 20 different galactic races who have come and introduced themselves to me. Some of them I connect with on a more regular basis. Some of them just more like once in a while, occasional, they'll come through. Some of them I've met once or twice. But I guess one of the things is now they've asked me to step up more into my role as a galactic ambassador. What that means is I'm here to help humans connect with the ETs and vice versa. Kind of being like a bridge, you know, showing people how we can initiate contact, teaching people the importance of doing this now in order to get closer to that vision of open contact in 2027. So there are many, many beings out there, thousands of races probably that I haven't even met yet. But of the ones that I have met, I've met the Arcturians, I've met the Pleiadians, I've met the Lyrans, the Andromedans. I've met some non-humanoid races as well. For example, there are some beautiful Syrian beings that appear in more whale and dolphin-like forms. I've met some jellyfish-like beings in the IC443 constellation. So there's lots and lots of different beings out there and forms of intelligent consciousness who I now communicate with through consciousness. Really, it's through like a telepathy type of communication.
Right. Or so you're astral projecting to another planet or to another dimension when you do this, or are they coming into your consciousness and talking to you while you sleep or while you meditate? How are you getting these communications, Aisha?
So for me, it's more like it's actually a constant communication these days. It used to be like I would sit in meditation, I would activate my Merkaba, or I would sit in my heart center and then I would communicate. But as I've become more practiced in this work, it's a 24/7 thing. I mean, even now as I'm talking about them, I can see the beings in my inner eye as we're having the conversation. So it's more I guess I would liken it to the analogy of like a radio transmitter where those channels are always open and at any given moment in time I can tune into what's happening over there and they can also communicate with me.
Well, and following up on that, I had a fellow here the other day. He said there's 82 different species in our universe of
Oh,
alien.
more than that.
It's probably more. He said 82, but the majority of them are humanoids like us. And also
Yeah.
now Harvard, and of course Dr. David Jacobs, when he studied all this, but Harvard even says that they are walking amongst us. We have human aliens or humanoid aliens that are walking amongst us and are just like us. Have you ever met any of them, Aisha?
Look, I've seen some of those articles, and I saw something pop up yesterday on some major news YouTube channel of some sort. I can't remember which one it was, but it had some 2 million plus views on it. And yeah, it had something a heading that was something along those lines that ETs are among us. And so I had a quick look at the video, and they were interviewing a lady who was a starseed. So I think what they're doing is they're kind of putting those two worlds together and saying, well, the starseeds are the ETs that walk among us. I don't know about that specific article with Harvard, but that's kind of what this thing was alluding towards. And I kind of get where they're coming from. But I also say that there's a misunderstanding around what that really means. I am born on Earth. So in this lifetime, I'm actually human because I'm born here,
Mhm.
right? I think people seem to have this thing that human is like if you're human, you're just human and you can't have any, ET connections whatsoever. And I would say, well, that's not true because every soul is multidimensional.
Yes.
So It's like saying, I'm born, if you're born in America, you say, well, I'm American, but then you're also still human, So it's like another identity. Like everybody wants to put these stuff into boxes. And I think, well, okay, let's hold your horses for a second, because that's not exactly how it works. How it does work, in my understanding, is that we're all multidimensional. Eesha in this lifetime is human. But my soul, because I have memories and connections with other galactic races, I know that my soul origin is very much from other spaces. Now, there's a deeper conversation around this as well, which goes into the human DNA and the history of tampering with DNA, and that the ET DNA has been mixed with human DNA, and that's how we have our current races. And there's quite a bit of truth in that as well. But in saying that, you really have to sort of define, what does human mean? To me, I just say, okay, well, if you're born on Earth for the purposes of this lifetime, you're human. Okay, you're human. So inside of that umbrella, there's people on this planet right now who have soul connections or even DNA connections to many other different galactic races. And so that's kind of where that concept gets a bit muddied, because people don't fully understand how it works.
Now, does that you're kind of describing what I've been abducted several times in my life, and I've had contact, and a lot of people, like when they had this many meetings with ETs, or they come into their life, they call themselves contactees. That
Mm.
means that these ETs are communicating with them. And why do they select? I know this is an old age question. Why do they select certain people and follow them? Is it because of the DNA frequencies they have, and that's why they follow them, Isha?
Sometimes it's DNA. Sometimes it's also just what your soul agreed to before you came here. So I know now, having gone through my sort of pre-birth experience
Mhm.
and looking at what I signed up to do here, I actually did agree to this. So I agreed to come down to Earth, to awaken at a certain point, and then to step into my role as a galactic ambassador. So I agreed to that. I absolutely agreed to that. And I think when people don't realize that they have agreed to it, it can be a very scary experience. Now, I want to add a little caveat in that as well, because there are some beings in the universe who have come to the earth, who have, without consent, done physical alterations, or surgeries, or even mixed sexual, like reproduction energies, and all sorts of stuff. And those beings really shouldn't be doing that. More recently, I'd say probably just in the last few decades, there's been a really strong decree in place that any beings who do come and do anything with the humans has to do so with consent. Now, that consent can happen before you come to Earth, but it can also happen after Earth, and you can change that consent. We're always empowered to change consent at any time.
Yes.
So some beings in the universe are a little bit naughty, and they were doing these things without full consent, or they were tricking people by telling them stories. Like, I once spoke to someone who said, oh, I had sex with an ET, and she said that we needed it for so and so purpose, and it was going to help save their race. And I took one look at that story and went, okay, that being was not 100% following the decree of consent, because they kind of tricked the person to give consent. It's kind of like finding loopholes in the contract. It's like there's an agreement that says you have to get consent. So then some beings who are in the lesser evolved end of the spectrum will go and do it kind of like the naughty way, or the cheeky way, or the loophole kind of method. So I have seen that happen, and I look at that and I go, like, they shouldn't really be doing that.
Yeah.
But that's just coming from the place of going, well, if we were operating at a society where we were in our highest morality and everything was ethical, then we probably would do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So the same, like here on Earth, when you have like rules, there are people out there that are going to break the rules,
Mm.
right? Even on Earth we have that. Well, there are other races that are doing the same thing. So some races, like Arcturians, for example, very highly evolved. You won't find those sorts of shenanigans happening with Arcturians for the most part, because they're operating in a much more unified state of consciousness, and so they are going to do everything with a higher level of integrity. Whereas some races, like maybe some reptilians who are still in their process of evolution, they're probably more like some humans on Earth, and they can't understand the reasoning behind some of this stuff. And it's no fault of their own. They've gone through their own soul's journey, and everybody's in their own evolution. But maybe some reptilians or some greys or some other races might not have that same ethical practice as what the Arcturians or the Pleiadians might have. So
Mm.
there's different levels that exist, and you just kind of have to know who you're dealing with, you know. But coming back to answer the core of your question as to why some people are chosen more than others, again, it comes down to agreements. It comes down to agreements. It comes down to the DNA. It comes down to, like, some people have consented for their DNA to be used in certain ways. Some beings, it's because it's their soul family. Like, I get visited by beings who are my soul family, so they're coming to me because we have a connection there. That's why.
Right. And just ETs, just like us, there's good and bad, I guess, individuals. And there's good reptilians and there's bad reptilians. And there's stories now going on that the reptilians and the Nephilim are they live underground and they're evil. And they actually play a lot of our leaders like puppets, and they control the world, along with the kings and the big banks and the billionaires all together in an elite cabal. And the ETs are actually, I guess, running things through their knowledge and their technology, uh, and they're underground, and they say that's where a lot of people disappear. Uh, do you ever follow into any of that issue? Is there any proof that they are doing the evil stuff that's causing us to do evil stuff here on this planet?
Look, I've heard a lot of those theories. There are some layers of truth to it, but some of it has been blown completely out of proportion. And what saddens me in those stories is then you get a bunch of people who call themselves woke and spiritual and enlightened or whatever, who go around blaming the government, blaming the ETs, blaming the puppets, and take zero responsibility again for the conscious co-creative power that we have. Now, even though there might be some truth to some of what's happening at that level, sitting around pointing fingers and saying, oh, the cabal is responsible for everything horrible that happens, is actually giving them more power. And this is the bit that people just don't realize. I look at this and I go, how do people not understand that when you feed the narrative, you're making the narrative true? The narrative is only more true now because more people have decided to believe it and have decided to play into that shadow matrix.
Mhm.
There was a lot less truth to it a few decades ago because people didn't know about it.
Yeah.
When you create something in your mind and you put belief into it, that's co-creative power. You know, it's like the fastest way to remove the devil from existence is to stop thinking about it. Like, stop putting energy into it, you know. And
Right.
everybody's putting all this energy, and I see all this stuff on places like Rumble and those like alternative channels, and everybody's like, wow, I'm so woke because I believe in all this stuff and I know the truth of what's happening. I'm like, it's not truth. There's only one real truth on this planet, and it's your energy is creating your future. So what are you putting out there? That's the biggest truth. Each one of us are in our own rights conscious creators of this reality. So if you spend all day every day sitting around listening to conspiracy theories, your energy is being added to the very thing that fuels that. You know, I hear this as well with a lot of people talk about what's happening in the astral realms, and they say, oh, these big wars going on the astral and all this kind of stuff. Um, and then they get really chuffed at themselves for knowing the truth. And I'm like, okay, even if that were true, you putting your energy into it, it's like everybody's walking around with these little tokens, you know. I'll give you an analogy, Dave. So here in Australia, we have a burger shop called Grilled, and when you walk into Grilled, they give you a token, and you put that token into something like a cause. So you could help, you know, the local school soccer team, or you can help a medical charity, or so you get an option of where you put your token.
Mhm.
What's happening right now is everybody's taking their precious creation tokens and they're chucking it into all these negative energies. And then they keep going, look, I was right. Look, I was right. Look, I was right. Because that's what happened. And I knew the truth all along. And I said, you didn't know the truth. You created that to be the truth. So I see that, and I see how people are giving their power away to all of these negative stories and energies and conspiracies, and then getting all chuffed at themselves at how true they were, but they didn't realize that their token is the one who built that truth. So my message to people is, take your tokens back, guys. Take your tokens, your conscious creative tokens, and put them where they matter. Put them on the vision of open contact for 2027. Put them on the vision of conscious creation, of peaceful reunification with our galactic family. When you put your energy there, you're handing your tokens to where it actually matters. Stop putting your energy into those other things. It's not helping anyone.
Yeah. Well, like it's mass hysteria equals I guess, mass negativity thinking, or what is going on. You're creating your own reality, and all of us together, all the humans together with our vibrations and our frequencies, we can direct that in that manner and actually cause a war. I think that's why a lot of wars are caused, because people get stirred up about this and that, and they all get together, and then their consciousness and their conscious thinking all goes in one line, and they say, okay, we're going to do this. That's what's going on today. I think I really like what you're saying, and I hope a lot of people listen to what you're saying there. That we create our own reality, and that's true.
Yeah,
Yes. It,
individually and collectively. Collectively, we have to take responsibility for what we've created. So many people out there are just like, I'm all love and light, but the cabal's at fault. Well, have you realized how your energy, like every time you get angry at the cabal, you're giving the cabal energy. Like, I'm like, do you realize that?
yeah.
It's because here's one thing I learned about energies is they're actually non-discriminatory. There's actually no such thing as good or bad in the non-physical realms, right? It's not a thing.
Mhm.
So any energy is energy. If you throw love at something, you're giving it energy. If you throw anger at something, you're giving it energy. And sadly, there's a more potency to anger and fear in the world right now than there is in the quality of love in many avenues, many avenues. So when I see people, on social media, whatever, having a big whinge about the cabal or whatever, negative energies and the evil reptilians, I go in there and I just sprinkle my love and light in that situation because I know that I can uplift the energy of that.
Mhm.
You can uplift the vibration of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm very mindful of where I put my energy, where I put my thoughts. Every day, my vision is on peaceful, open contact because that's the reality I want to create.
Right.
That's the reality that I want to put my energy into. And my energy, each person's energy is the most powerful asset that we have. It is the most powerful tool, more valuable than gold, more valuable than diamonds, more valuable than anything, any resource on this planet. Your energy, because it has the power to create. So where are you going to put it?
I can see why you're teaching what you're teaching, because I guess I can pick it up. Your energy is so positive, and I picked it up from the last show, and so did my wife, like I said. But I picked that up from you, and you are a person that can enlighten other people, and I hope you just keep doing that. I'm doing it on a smaller scale than you are, but I'm trying to enlighten people to some of the truths that's going on, and also it's love, kindness, and peace, and that's why a lot of people say peace and love. Some of these people that are spiritual. And I was asked the other day, "What are you? Are you religious?" This was a psychiatrist that were he graduated from Princeton and he teaches at Yale. Very smart guy. He asked me what I was, and I said, "Okay, I guess I'm not Catholic. I used to be, but I'm a spiritual person." And that's how I look at things, not in a religious type fashion, but in a spiritual fashion. I wanted to get into now the disclosure that we have, that we're talking about, the ET disclosure. I have some ideas about that. I don't think it's our military or our politicians or our leaders actually holding back on these meetings. I know we've had a couple of Senate committee meetings that were postponed by the Pentagon. And I don't think it's them. I think it's somebody higher up. It could be the ETs themselves that are saying we can't have disclosure now. It's not the right time. But you're saying, and you say that we can influence that disclosure timeline, and I think we are in a slow way. What do you think about that issue?
I think there is truth to what you've said in the regard that the beings will wait until we can do it peacefully. It's really big for them, really big. I hear this from the Galactic Federation all the time. The reason why it hasn't happened sooner is because the consciousness of the humans has been at a point where if they were to just come in and have this mass open contact, that politically and from a military perspective, it we might still just pull guns on them. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Can you imagine? Well, don't imagine this really, but the last scenario that anybody wants is like 8 billion people in fear at the same time. I mean, we went through that with the pandemic, and actually, a lot of us learned how to transmute it, but it needs to be done peacefully because our co-creative power has so much potential that energy, it ripples out through the multiverse. Like, you know, there's an impact. We've kind of been in this isolated bubble here on Earth, and as we reunite with our galactic family, we need to be in a high enough vibration that we can do it in peace. If we can't do it in peace, we don't get to go there, because it's just, you know, the civilizations that have been allowed to space travel and reconnect with each other, they're still at a higher level of consciousness than what we are. Even the reptilians and greys, like, oh, you know, we give them a bad rap, but they're at least united, you know, with the galactics. Like, we're not even there. We are not even there,
Yeah.
because of how much we self-destruct in amongst ourselves.
Well, even our
And so we
military.
need to
Yeah.
demonstrate our ability as a human race to have some level of peacefulness and to embrace them with peace. Otherwise, they can't do it, you know. So there is that element of, they are waiting for us to get our act together.
Our military actually talks about shooting down
Yes,
flying saucers
exactly. They
or
can't.
ET craft. And so they see us as being militant, and that's the more they
Yeah,
do that, there's more of them flying around today than ever. I think maybe
yeah.
because we have cell phones and things of that nature. But what do you think about this? What do your in your the you know this galactic team that you talk to? There's why do we have an increase in UFO, UAP sightings and the military talking about it more and more? Why is the increase? Are we building up to some
Yeah.
crescendo issue?
Oh,
What?
we absolutely are. And yeah, so to come back to the positive end of the spectrum here, the ascension timeline is actually well on track. So given everything that we've just said, there are enough people out there that are holding this vision right now. And even though I'm always going to encourage more people to do that, there is a momentum that's building. More people are opening their hearts. More people are realizing, you know, to that we can see through the narratives and the dramas and the societal structures that we've built up. So it's interesting, because what's happening right now is there's quite a bit of polarization, and this is very typical of anything that's in the fourth dimension. As we transition from 3D to 4D to 5D, the fourth dimension is actually very polarizing. So we're seeing this rapid increase of chaos, but we're also seeing this rapid increase of light, and they're happening simultaneously. Now, in an ideal situation, they unify quickly enough that you know, we can dissolve with all the love all the chaos.
Right.
And so while we're seeing more wars and you know, more pain and more suffering, we are also seeing more craft, because there's also enough light being held at this time to bring that in. And so there is a really positive aspect to all of this as well. And I do want to leave people with a message of hope, that to remember that all we have to do is, each person has to decide upon themselves to open their hearts and to ask for this. And part of it is the free will. It's the free will. The more of us that choose this, the more of us that choose this in love, we can have this open contact and be reunited with our galactic family in a very peaceful way. So the reason why we're seeing more and more of this activity happening is we are building up towards something. We're building up towards this open contact, and whoever is ready to anchor this light, whoever's ready to receive this message, they are getting their own contacts. That's the whole philosophy behind First Contact, the podcast, is we share this message that ultimately it's up to us. We get to choose it. We are empowered to choose this for ourselves, and we get to navigate and influence the direction that this contact happens. And it's actually a very positive outcome at the end of it all, because we are getting so much support from our galactic brothers and sisters who are coming to visit us, who are sending us so much love, so much light. They want us to be reunited with them. They want us to uplift our frequency, you know, and it's up to us to decide that.
Yeah. I've never been hurt by any of my visitations throughout my
Mm.
life, and it's always been a spiritual, like I was really it's euphoric in a way when you have this type of meeting. I I see I see this world, I guess, like you're saying, the fourth dimension. You made sense there when you said that. You said something about a matrix a while ago. When somebody says matrix, I have to ask them, Isha, are we in a matrix?
Yes and no. I think the Matrix has been as it. I would call it like a illusion. I would call it Matrix an illusion. But it's real enough because enough people believe in it.
Mm.
So the Matrix is not actually real. What's real is this beautiful garden paradise, heaven on earth. That's planet Earth. That's the true nature of this reality. Um, but false illusions can become manifest through collective belief systems. So when enough people believe it to be real, it has a quality of realness to it. But it is actually an illusion. It's not the truth of who we are. And once you realize that, you step out of that and you go, oh, actually, the reality is this heaven on earth. Then you can shift where you place your energy into the co-creation of the true organic nature of this planet and our connection with the earth. Because that's why we came here. We didn't come here to be stuck in a matrix.
Yeah.
That's that got created. That's the illusion that got created. Some people call it the false light matrix, or there's many names for it. But anyway, it's not even really real. If you see that is the illusion, then you actually in itself get yourself out of it.
Let me ask you a question about the Mayan calendar. I heard I've had a couple of people who actually got mad at me. I didn't know them very well. They got mad at me because they asked me, they said, where were you at in 2012? And they said, you went through a reset. Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever dealt with that?
Yeah.
The human race goes through resets, and the Mayan calendar in 2012 was actually a reset, not a destruction of the world.
Yeah,
Issue.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was never meant to be destroyed. It was never meant to be doom and gloom. And again, it's one of those instances where, prophecies or predictions have been misinterpreted and then everybody puts this negative connotation to it. It was never meant to be a negative thing. 2012 was meant to be the start of the golden age. It's finally, a peaceful age where we can move into this new age of beingness, the age of Aquarius. It carries a different quality. It was meant to be a positive thing.
Right. I will I will put a lot of the stuff on the narrative on this video for people to, catch up with you and catch up with your podcast. Could you tell us in closing, the hour is just about up, and could you tell us in closing uh, what you're doing now and what you want to do, and where can we find you, Eesha?
Yeah. So my work now as a Galactic Ambassador, mostly I do my podcast, First Contact. So that's available on all major platforms. And it's really about getting the word out there about our ability to consciously communicate. Also host a galactic community. So you can learn all about that on my website, which is eeshapatel.com, EESHAPATEL. We have a wonderful community for star seeds and people who want to learn how to make contact in a really heart-centered way. You can come join us, hang out with us, learn about these philosophies, and take action towards this as well. It's one thing to talk about it and another to actually invest in this reality for yourself and make it happen. So what we're doing in our galactic community is we're making it happen.
That's great. You have any written materials, articles, or books that you got out right now that people can take a look at, Isha?
I don't have any books out at the moment, but most of my stuff is on YouTube, Facebook. I'm very active on my website. You can find things as well. I do have a blog on Medium, but I don't post there very often, to be honest.
Mm.
But yeah, you can find me on mostly like video platforms like this.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with you and the peace and the good energy, positive energy. I've been pushed, I guess, the last 3 or 4 years to get my truth out and what's happened to me and tell people about my experiences with the extraterrestrials by podcast and then by writing books. That's the way. And this fourth book I wrote, sci-fi, it actually brings peace and love between an ET, a Pleiadian, and a male, a man that's a human, a male, and it brings them together. That is part of what I think I'm being pushed to do. That I think we have the powers outside of us, our consciousness, that kind of will us and tell us to do things. And I think that's what I'm doing. I'm doing what I'm told to do, and that's the important thing, that I feel right about doing what I'm doing, and that means exercise too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They always tell me to look after my body. It's important, right?
Oh yeah, I go to exercise. I'm an old guy, and I still work out 3 times a week. But
Nice.
that's part of I guess the promise I made a couple of years ago to push ahead on this enlightenment, because I'm getting to the age where I need to get it all out, and that's where I'm at with it. And Aisha, any last closing words?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for the beautiful work that you're doing, Dave, as well. It's so important that we have these conversations. So I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to share my message on your show today.
Oh, I love having you guest. I had you here about 4 or 5 months ago, and I wanted to have you back because my wife said, not because of what my wife said, but because I knew you were a very pleasant, positive person, in which what we need today. we need that type of thing. I wish I could do more shows with more people like you, but there's not that many people like you. I mean, Eesha, you're a individual that's got your own positive energy in what you do, and I appreciate it, and I think everybody else should too. And that's why I enjoy having you on the show. Eesha Patel has been a guest for the last hour, and she's done a great job, and I really appreciate what she does. Been listening to the Dave Emmons Strange Reality Show, and I'd like to thank everybody for listening in. I hope you catch this show and look up Eesha on the internet and on her podcast and Facebook. Thank you, and good night, everybody. Thank you, Eesha.